Alright friends, hello there, and today, undertaking the second of the weapons tier list, the melee tier list. This one is going to be a little bit more intricate than with ranged tier list. For ranged weapons, it's a little bit of a different story, right? For most ranged weapons, they fall into those larger categories. There's not a whole lot of variation between marks because it just is a factor of, does this do enough damage compared to how much time and ammunition you spend, right? But for melee weapons, there's a lot of sort of nuance. There are marks within weapon families that are far superior, that are way, way, way above their brethren. So I will be making extra special mention. If the two weapons would be on the same tier, here I'll be saying which one is better, and I'll be putting it closer to the left side. That'll be where the better stuff is, so you can understand which marks are more powerful. But most times when there are differences in mark powers, you'll see that the other one is like way farther down. So that's something to keep an eye out for here, because for melee weapons, the mark that you're using is probably the most important thing, outside of the weapon family itself. Using the right mark is like make or break on so many of these. But that's all I have to lead with here. And of course, I'm still working on builds and stuff. So keep subscribing and joining the channel or whatever you want to do in order to support. Thank you guys very much for watching. Let's get underway, because we got a lot to get through here, and I don't want to be here for 2 hours. Only an hour and 45 minutes. That's my cutoff. So we're gonna go. I'm just gonna go in the order that's right here. And I think that's actually is kind of funny because I think I've started with bully clubs the past couple times as well. So bully clubs. These are the Ogryn bully clubs. We've got the Mark 3B. We've got the Mark 2 and the Mark 1. This one, the Mark 3B, has been the superior choice of these bully clubs for quite a while. The reason being is this club has the fastest swing time. It has a very strong light attack spam unga bunga combo, and it follows into, I think it's like the fourth attack or third attack in that combo is a strike down that is very damaging. And this weapon was like the de facto weapon when Ogryn was getting the batter sort of talent buff, where he hit everything for 2 stacks of bleed with every lead attack. This was the weapon of choice. It's fallen some ways out of favor here because the reduced stagger on his heavy hitter talent tree and the reduced bleeds on batter have really kind of taken and gutted it. However, I can't deny that this weapon is not just standard fare. This one particularly is like of the better choices. So I'm gonna say this particular weapon, because the base stagger and because it's so unga bunga, if you're playing an Auric or whatever, easy choice. just run through here. Hey, thank you for the 333 tip, your grandma. But the stats here are just too high. The stagger's too high. The attack speed is too high. You can unga bunga your way through levels on non-havoc difficulties with this just fine. I think it's only once you pass that Auric to havoc sort of transition where you'll need to start concerning yourself with some of the more powerful, and there's really not that many choices for the Ogryn, but we'll get to them real soon. For the other two weapons, I am gonna give the Mark II this understated and jank thing. It's honestly borderline. What purpose does this serve? This weapon just has such a weird move set, and it doesn't offer anything. It has pretty much identical damage to this Mark 1 version, but this one at least has a strong overhead strike down on its one attack, so you can just walk around doing heavy attack spam. But really, at this point, there really is just generally no reason to use either of these. This one does have a slight claim to existence because it is like pretty good damage just on its face. But if I am talking about the bully clubs, I have to talk about the thing that is replacing the bully clubs in large part, which is the power maul. The power maul is going in this top tier of weapons. It is not, I might have to make a separate tier later on, but this is one of the Ogryn's GOAT weapons. Ogryn has 2 very, very strong melee weapons, like obscenely strong weapons, and then a few that are like right behind that. But this one has just recently got a buff. They cut 2 seconds off of the charged timer, the huge explosion that this thing does. you know, the Ogren is a CC powerhouse, right? That's his idea, is like you'll stagger with your taunt, and then you'll stagger with dodging and shoving, and then you can follow that up with one of these slams that hits everything, and it is incredibly, incredibly powerful. Like, it actually will kill most non-crusher targets in one hit. This weapon is also really, really good for the like, the Ogren has issues with enemies like mutants and shit like that just won't fuck off, and for whatever reason, his only real counter to mutants is either like Brank's pickaxe or like one of the shovels, and then like using the special on the shovel. But this thing will whop a mutant or anything easy as fuck. And also the immense radius on the stagger here, like, stuff just doesn't get to do anything, right? You could use rock, I guess, yeah, but stuff just doesn't get to play the game when you're out here with the power maul. And it has pretty dang good baselines. Of course, it's got Skull Crusher, so what you'll see over and over again is that a lot of the weapons that are up here are going to be abusing really powerful blessings. They are either crit stackers with things like Shred or Riposte, or they have Uncanny Strike, or they have Skull Crusher. I think in terms of the blessings in the game, those three, probably 20% crit, Uncanny Strike, and Skull Crusher, those are like the top tier blessings in the game, and have been for a while. They're like remnants of a past age where blessings were like god tier. And Skull Crusher being on this thing means that everything gets staggered, you follow in, and then you just destroy it. And so it just ends up being a great asset to the team. You can build it as a primary melee, you can build it as your backup weapon. It's cool, I love it. And I'm very, very glad they did that to it, because, and that they're continuing to buff it. Because, like, I mean, hell, Ogren could use the help. It's not like they're going to make it more powerful than any other class by doing it. Then we'll talk about the combat axes here. You know, combat axes, I think that de facto the Antax combat axe here is like standard fare. It's so standard fare that the bots come equipped with it when you play, like, you know, solo games, or you can't find anybody to join your game of expeditions. And the Antax is a really solid weapon. And I say this every time I talk about it, but like, you'll notice the difference when you get bots in your game. Sometimes they'll have, I believe they can be equipped with the heavy sword or the Antax, right? I think those are their choices. And when they're equipped with the Antax, they'll live like 10 times longer, because they can actually kill stuff, because this thing just light attack spams and it just chops stuff. So if you're playing, oh, Devil's Claw, it's Devil Claw. Yeah, I knew it was like one of those weapons, but they don't parry with it, which is stupid. But the base light attack damage on this Antax is pretty solid. If you are a new player, if you're just getting into like Malice, Heresy, heading up that way, Antax, easy choice, right? On most of the classes that have it. It's not the strongest weapon in the world. It struggles into armor like really, really bad. But for most stuff, it just chops it up and staggers it. If it doesn't kill it, it'll stagger it as well. And then it just makes it easy to unga bunga with. And there's no finesse to it at all. It's just like left, right, diagonal swipes. Then we got the Rashad. The Rashad is going to go up here. This is a superior statted weapon. It does have a finesse and first target multipliers on it. Has really, really good headshot damages. Very surprising. Like, this weapon is boring as fuck to use. Like, it is such a basic weapon, but I mean, you can't deny the numbers that this thing can put down. You can take this and just, like, you know, if you can repeatedly hit headshots on bosses, you can chop them for like 8,000 damage a hit. It's kind of crazy because of the multipliers here. But it's just like a weapon like this is kind of just behind the curve of what's considered a powerful weapon at this point. Because yes, oh wow, I can hit like one enemy with a big powerful strike down, but there's other weapons that can do that, and then they've got a whole bunch of other stuff too. So while it does have superior stats, it's not quite up here. I might need another tier, honestly, if I'm thinking about the way where I'm putting that there. It is, yeah, it's pretty much like only a headshot axe. Then we have the Atlas. I think this is I always put this one like way down here. I'm gonna put it down here again. Like, yeah, what purpose does this serve? It doesn't have the same, it has the same stat lines as the Rashad does. However, none of its moves allow you to hit heads with this, because the heavy attack is a backwards hook, sweeping right to left with the like the beard or whatever you call that. Not this is the beard. What's the little point on the back? You know what I mean? And you'll catch all sorts of random crap. It's like when the Thunderhammer used to swing horizontally with the charge move, and you would hit like a random Poxwalker when you're trying to get a headshot. It's so stupid. I hate it. And all of its other moves are just like super high angle verticals. Like those are its light attacks, so you're just missing everything with it. You know, for an axe like this, you just want this sort of sweep. Diagonal sweep, nice, lops lots of heads, cleaves through. This one is like straight up and down, so if you're not aiming precisely, you'll miss, and then its heavies are, it's so bad. So yeah, just don't use this. Like there's no reason to use that at all. Then we got to do tack axes though. Tack axes are all, I think I do need another tier, but we'll get to it when we get to it. Tack axes are all superior weapons here. The best of the tack axes is the Mark 7. This is the general purpose use tack axe for all classes. So every class that has access to it, which is every human class, right? Like even Arbites has these. So yeah, every human class has access to the taxes. Super solid on all of them. Reason being, huge crit bonus on these. I think they have a base of an additional 12% crit plus a crit damage boost on these. And crits are like the game right now. Like almost every weapon that's in this upper tier, if it is not a weapon with like insane impact that makes it so that enemies can't play the game, that locks them out and puts them on the floor, it's a weapon that crits, generally. There's like very few exceptions to the rule, and these are of course crit gods. They also have like really, really fast attack speed, they have fast movement speed. I'm going to put this one up here in the OP tier. The next best one is the blue mark here, the Mark 4. This one is the one you'll want to use if you're playing Hive Scum though, because this one has a better, the heavy attacks on this one are a straight down overhead, and then a straight up uppercut. And those attacks have a bonus ADM against Carapace, which is like the one thing that the tack axe normally struggles with. Now, the only reason you choose this only on Hive Scum is because Hive Scum can use hyper violence to cheat the damage. Otherwise, the damage on this one being the highest is going to give you the best numbers, but Hive Scum doesn't care about base damage. Hive Scum only cares about critical ratio and ADM. So yeah, that's why it's here. And then this one, the Mark II, is probably the weakest, but all three of them are just like, you know, if you just took it into like a block of meat and just went spamming attacks, you would rack up some pretty incredible numbers because of that crit ratio and because of the attack speed. Okay, we've got our pickaxes, Ogren pickaxes. We've got the Carcelus, the fuck if I remember, and then the Branks. What's this one called? Gorgona? No, it's not Gorgona. Who knows? Literally nobody's using this one, right? So yeah, these weapons, they're pretty okay. The pickaxe would be such a better weapon if it was synergistic with what the Ogren needed right now. And I might just be saying this as a player who plays mostly Havoc, where Ogrens have like specific limitations because gunners are so dangerous to them, and just generally they have to kind of be insulated by their team. The weapon doesn't really like cohere with a lot of that stuff, but you can't deny that this thing can like one-shot wallop like a motherfucker. So I'll give the Branks the distinction of the superior move stats. Whatever this middle-sized one is, I'm going to give that one the standard fare. I think they're all fairly well statted. Borovian, that's right, yeah. I think they're all fairly well statted. Like, these certainly aren't like understated by any means. There's no way they're down here. There's no way that these weapons need any buffs or anything. The thing that makes the pickaxe like not all that great on the Ogren, like in comparison to some of his other weapons, is just Ogren things. It's just Ogren related issues, not anything in particular to do with the weapon. And then we have the Carcelus, which is the light attack spammer, which is probably also going to be a superior statted weapon, because this one, for most enemies, those light attacks are just going to be enough to deal with it. If you're going into like a mission where there is a lot of Carapace, or something like that. A lot of armor type enemies. If you happen to be a Havoc player and you're going up against pink as one of the modifiers, so those healing enemies, Branks can be really, really solid here. Because if you can get one solid hit, you'll get the pick, you'll get the kill, and that can be very valuable. So I have to give the credit to that. Okay. Then we'll do the 2 Riot shields. What is it? They're RBD's Stun Club and Riot Shield. Oh, I hear Bernie.
Wow.
Oh, maybe you can't hear that. It's on. Okay, I won't mention it. Thank you. Whoever became a member, because you won't be able to hear that in the recording, hopefully. But these two, the Shock Maul and Riot Shield, whatever their formal name is, I'd say they're roughly equivalent in terms of their like efficacy. It's just down to a matter of flavor for which one that you like. I believe this is the one that I normally run with, which is the default mark. But both of these are superior weapons. They definitely are in that superior stat moveset category. Reason being, like, these weapons have enough damage to overpower most things. The only time you really feel the damage lacking is when you're up against your carapace armored enemies or bosses themselves, like monstrosities, etc. But they do okay against captains and captain shields. But this weapon, because it is a shield, is already, and it's a snappy response shield, it has already got a huge advantage over a ton of other weapons because you can block range attacks with it, which is insane for the RBDs to be able to do. He's already hard enough to kill without being able to block gunfire. Then the shield also is able to flashbang enemies for free. It's just basically it's like a cooldown. You can get more by staggering enemies, and that is such an invaluable tool. You have an additional tool in your kit. You know, this is something that, like, it's basically like a blackout grenade for the Hive scum, but just associated with your melee weapon. And if you are sort of offensive about using it in the appropriate places, you can make a lot of situations way better for you and your team if you're using the shield flashbang appropriately. And yeah, it's actually like crazy useful. That this weapon even without that feature, I think would probably still be up here just for how strong it is defensively and how fast its attack speed is and how high the stagger is. And the base damages aren't bad either. Like, the base damages are incredibly comparable to tons of other weapons in the game that don't also have shields, and has a pretty decently high damage ratio into lots of types of armor. But then it's got this flashbang utility as well that I think is just such a solid like thing to have it on there. It's from blocking, not staggering. I remember it was something like that. Yeah, it's blocking, or I think, yeah, you're probably right. It's blocking attacks. Either way, I mean, it comes back passively, and you can get it back faster by blocking attacks. But you'll have it up on pretty often, and you'll be able to make a situation, make a rescue, get a dog off of somebody, get a trapper to stop coming in, right? Really good on defensive positioning, because if you're like, you've got a trapper who's in the mix and they're kind of making their way around, and you know it's going to be a hard situation for you to dodge out of the way, you can just flashbang them as they're coming in, and they'll get staggered out of the animation, which is really, really cool. Yeah, I think this weapon is very cool. I run it in a lot of my RBD's builds because it's super solid, and it feels nice to be able to block, you know, overheads from captain's stuff. Then we've got our Ogryn shovels. Why are all the Ogryn weapons here at the top? The Ogryn shovels, I think they've fallen down quite a bit, you know, just because the Ogryn playstyle doesn't really comport itself to shoveling, although I can't deny that they're strong, right? I want to say that this shovel right here, which sacrifices the ability to bend the blade, is used to be like an interesting thing, because the extra stagger on the class allowed you to stagger like everything, bosses and demon hosts and stuff. I do believe, and someone can correct me in the comments if that's incorrect, but I do believe it has been nerfed to the point where that is no longer the situation anymore. So I will give this one the understated, you know, jank category. I don't think there's really any reason to be running the shovel without that capability. You know, that was just like the one claim to fame that this particular Mark had. But we have the Mark 19 here. No, wait, this is the Mark 19 and this is the Mark whatever. You know, these two with the foldable blades. These are both very competitive. One's the Mark 5, one's the Mark 19. I can never tell them apart. But the thing here is like these weapons have a really long setup time to do a really big blast of damage, which is great. But the problem being is like the Ogryn really doesn't need any more weapons that are like super slow to prepare to do one big attack. You know, he's got enough of that in his set, and the Ogryn's real problem is that the enemies can exploit the fact that he is slow in reacting, he's slow at moving, and get him with fast like blitzes. And what the Ogryn really wants to do in return to that, in order to survive, in order to really combat enemies appropriately, is to make certain that they can't act. He wants to stagger like vast amounts of them. So you could be doing this same thing of blowing up one target and by just using the branks. If you really wanted to do that, I think it'd just be better because the branks can do this much more often than you can by swapping to the folded mode and then do-da-da-da-da. But in general, Ogryns are much more effective in combat when they're using their stagger equipment, like the power maul, like the slab shield we'll talk about in a little bit, to just like effectively make it so that enemies can't play the game in return. And you'll also be, you know, you'll be much safer as a player in doing so. So I think that these are just going to be standard, with this one being lower down because it doesn't have the ability to one-shot stuff. But there's really not a huge desire for this sort of thing on the Ogryn right now, especially considering the branks. It's hard to outcompete the branks for one-shot potential. But the shovels are like, they're fine in terms of statting and stuff. I wouldn't have any complaints about them. What I do have complaints about are these cleavers at this point. These are de facto what has to go into this lowest category of what purpose does this serve. Cleavers, for a very brief moment in time, players were using them after the Ogryn rework early last year in 2025, because the changes to batter meant that light attacks were adding tons and tons of bleed stacks to everything, and so players were, oh, like daggers, cleavers, they have really fast attacks, that's going to be good. But then people realized that the club has just as fast of attacks and has better like strike downs and better stagger values. There's just really not any way that these weapons are going to provide anything to the Ogryn right now. They're not like, what do these do that something else in the class doesn't? If you wanted to have like a cleaving weapon, you could run like the shovels. They're the same thing but better. They have the ability to one-shot annoying enemies. You could run the slab shield if you wanted to cleave like and hit like 20 things in front of you. I just don't, and these are not that much faster swinging weapons than, I don't think they are faster swinging weapons than the Bully Club here is. The Car Solus is probably a better just unga bunga weapon. Yeah, I don't know exactly what the purpose of these is right now. They don't have any unique blessings or anything that allows them to be used in a way that other weapons on the class couldn't. They can't do anything against armor. They don't have good boss damages. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I just don't know. They are missing out on. I think this is a part of the problem of the design for Ogryn, is because he doesn't have a critical angle. Like, he's not a class that's designed around crits or headshots. They just don't have that as a potential thing that they could be designed around. So the knives just end up being redundant to a bunch of other stuff, or whatever they call that. These cleavers end up being redundant to a bunch of other stuff, and their low range is going to kill them at the end of the day. Because like, if you're going to have that low range, you just go shovel instead. Have a very similar base moveset, and then you'd also have the Omega Kaplow with the bent mode. So yeah, these need some serious love. Probably in the form of some OP blessings. Like, give them Uncanny Strike. Maybe people would use them then. I don't know. We've got the Assault Chain Swords. I'm just going to put these in the understated and jank category. I got people asking me all the time whether or not these should be used. No. The answer is just no. Chain weapons just don't have any good... you know, in once upon a time in Darktide, the tempo of the game was a lot slower, and so you could be forgiven for using a chainsword and like lodging it in an enemy and ripping it out. But the tempo of the game is not there anymore, and I just don't know exactly what these offer, because they attack super fast and they have very little stagger, but they don't have any good like critical ratios or anything like that. About the only thing I think these are unique for is the fact that you can very quickly tap enemies with the weapon special using the Bloodletter blessing and immediately jump to, I think it's 15. You just immediately get 15 stacks of bleed. That's okay, I guess. I mean, you could just play with the knife and do that pretty easily as well. But yeah, these things are just weird. I have never had a build where I thought like, oh, the perfect melee weapon for this would be the chainsword, and they don't have any. There's no way to take this weapon and like build around it to make it exceptional either, which I think just probably means it's understated, right? If I'm not able to find a use case for it, yeah, I think that these weapons are. Unfortunately, the weapon special just isn't really ever going to be much of anything, and the moment-to-moment impact and damage that these are doing is pretty poor. About the only thing I can say is that chain weapons in general are good against captain shields, but I think if you're like thinking about playing with this, you've got way better options on every class that has access to these. If you're playing on Zealot, you have a way better option with the Eviscerator. Like the Eviscerator kind of gets it right? And this thing is like, I don't know, they're just like really understated. They don't feel like powerful to use the ripping mode at all, and it's just not worth your time. Now let's talk about some interesting weapons here. We got we'll move on past the knives, but we got to talk about these our lovely Parry blades here, which is literally the only real reason these are as good as they are. So this one here is the bad one. This is the understated or jank one. This one just has a bad moveset. So don't use this one, okay? But I will give both of these this superior stats or movesets tier. We've got both of these weapons, right? They have very similar properties on their attacks. The difference of the matter here is that the Mark 7, I don't remember the names of the marks here, but the Mark 7 or whatever has these little holes in it. And it has a strike down on heavy 2, and that can be pretty good. It's like an actually like decently armor penetrating strike, and it's pretty good for Hive scum as well, especially if you're going for Rampage, because during Rampage you have you can take that talent where you get 25% additional rending on your heavies, and now you get access to heavy through that. Also, this weapon has a follow-up on its follow-up light on the parry. That's a lunge. That's pretty good. Like, it has some pretty good ratios there and does some pretty decent armor pen as well. And then our Mark, whatever the fuck this one is, the 1 or Mark, whatever it is, this one has the superior like light spam attacks. So really it's up to you like which one you want to go with right here. I think this one is probably like better if you have like better finesse, but if you're just unga bunga, and also if you're just using this weapon like purely on defense, like if you're just kind of like cruising around and you're just waiting for stuff to parry, the difference here is non-existent. These two have the exact same parry stats. However, let's talk about the parry really quickly, because that's what defines these weapons. That's what has put it as high as it is. The parry is insane on these right now. Parrying is an attack that does like 2,300 damage on a crit headshot. Like, it's insane, the multiplier. And that's like at a baseline, right? So when you look at these weapons on the baseline, they're doing like 6x damage over what like the normal attacks do. Here, I'm just gonna pull it up on my side screen here. So yeah, the parry, the normal parry, if I were to do a parry and hit a body shot on like a flak armored dude, 465. But if I hit a crit weak spot, it does 1684. It's doing quadruple damage, and for anything to deal 1700 damage, on unyielding it's doing 2400 damage. That's the baseline that everything else multiplies into. So you take this and you put it on Hive Scum, who can like take his damage and go to the moon with Rampage and all that extra stuff, and then you parry something and you immediately have a boss's health bar. So stupid. But they're just good like defensive weapons, good on Psyker, good on Zealot. I think the absolute best user of this is, of course, Hive Scum, because the Hive Scum doesn't care about the low baselines of the like light attacks, heavy attacks, whatever. He overwrites that with hyper violence and the attack speed. But yeah, the riposte, the parry, it's so incredibly safe that it allows you to do whatever you want, because it has a full 100% overlap time. So you can literally just sit there like a dumbass and just keep going block, 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 spamming as fast as possible, and the enemies can't hit you. And it's just a matter of sustaining your stamina. And if you're actually like skilled, you can wait until like the last millisecond before you get hit and then parry, and it'll take like 1/10 of the stamina reduction. So you can even block like crusher overheads and stuff. Really cool weapon. I am very like happy about the way that this weapon has been changed over the years. It used to be like one of the weakest weapons in the game. It had this parry that like was pretty much useless, and they've now made it so the parry is actually very useful. And in fact, you can have a whole playstyle like revolving around like, oh yeah, come on, hit me, fuck you, and just cut their head off, which is really fun. So yeah, I like these a lot. Let's do the daggers next, the combat blades. Of course, these combat blades are going to go in this toppest of top tiers. Combat blades have long been some of the most powerful weapons in the game, even harkening back to its earliest stages. You know, way back when there wasn't a talent tree, the Zealot could use the knife and he could attain like, you know, nigh immortality with the amount of crits and bleeds and stuff it could fly. Just a solid weapon. The knife's sort of specialty here has always been applying bleeds. It's the bleed applicator weapon. One thing that I've really taken a liking to in the last like 6 months or so with this weapon is using the talent Lacerate, which applies 4 stacks of bleed on a body shot. That means you can just go around and start light attacking everything just like unga bunga without even thinking about it. Just do a drive-by on like some random like joker and hit them twice and they're gonna bleed to death. 8 stacks of bleed is plenty. The veteran uses this very well because the veteran can get an extra 2 stacks. This has a perfect synergy with the Zealot, because the Zealot, someone on Twitch just said, the Zealot requires you to hit bleeding targets to stack Scourge. So this dagger means that immediately you will jump to having 30% crit, because you'll hit them one time, they're guaranteed bleeding, and now you can hit them more times and you'll get those crits. And then of course this dagger also has the Uncanny Strike on it. So Uncanny Strike, you can just go ahead and light attack the boss a bunch and then start to attack them in the head, and you'll see the damage of those bleed stacks go way up, because Uncanny Strike boosts your rending, which boosts damage to Unyielding and Carapace mainly. You'll see that work. You can take out crushers with it. In terms of which mark you should be using, I personally would advise that you learn to play with the Mark 6. I think this one probably will have the superior moveset overall. I know a lot of people swear by the Mark 3 or whatever, but the Mark 6, the heavy attack being a sweep is generally better because it allows you to deal with hordes. And then your push stab is really where the bread and butter of this weapon is, both marks. The push stab attack on the Mark 6 is this little jab that comes out straight from the center of your screen. And you can throw these out about 2 times faster than any other attack. It's like on the par with a light attack, just spamming light attacks. And they are pinpoint precise, like you go exactly where the reticle is. And they are as damaging as a heavy attack is. So you just spam those things like every quarter of a second, and you'll demolish. You'll demolish like very quickly a boss's health bar or a crusher or something like that. Very cool weapon. And of course the movement speed bonus as well. Being able to use the holding down, channeling the heavy 2 will allow you to run 20% faster. It boosts your sprint speed by 20%, and then you can just chain that all day and run around the map like a lunatic. Very fun. Okay. All right, we got the Relic blades next. So we've got 2 marks for the Relic blade. We got the Mark 2 and the Mark 10. Everybody knows that there's one good mark here. And actually, honestly, to be fair, both of them are solid. Like, both of them are at least at this status. It's just that the moveset of the Mark 2 ascends it to the OP status tier. The difference here being that with the Mark 10, your attacks are pretty much going to end up just being all horizontals. You've got plenty of horizontal coverage. You can lawnmower a horde all day, right? So if you are an Auric or below player and you're not encountering a lot of metal in your games, you probably don't need the additional strike down power that the 2 offers. So you can probably stick to the Unga Bunga style of the 2. The thing is, and this is going to be very similar with the Force Greatsword we'll talk about in a second. The thing is, the 2 offers an additional set of moves that are effective against single target without really compromising your multi-target at all. You can still use light spam, and light spam that's empowered is damaging enough to kill hordes anyway. So yeah, you're completely set up to deal with hordes. You can still use heavy 1, heavy 2 to do sweeps if you really needed to, but I find it to be redundant. The additional moves that this one unlocks are the overhead and uppercut that are really, really good at nailing heads. And of course, you've got your sprinting lunge attack that is that's pretty cool in this blade. But both these blades are just really good. They are my paradigms I always point to for like a well-designed weapon. Yeah, they're on the powerful side of things, but I think if this were like the pinnacle of power in Darktide, I wouldn't really have a problem with it, because they do make you compromise in terms of dodge count. They make you compromise in terms of base movement speed. You know, you have to build around using this weapon, and it is mechanically complex. If you get good at using this weapon, you get a return on your investment, right? And it is a investment of time and effort to understand how to use it appropriately. If you just unga bunga with it, yeah, it'll be pretty good, but you can get like 30% more power if you know when to use the right move and how to get to that move, because it actually has some pretty, like, I would say, complex sequencing to unlock some of those weapon chains, which is intricate and it's cool, and I like that design. This is a much better design than some weapons we'll talk about that don't even give a shit about weapon chains, that are just the strong attack over and over and over again. And speaking of weapons that are like chaining just the strong attack over and over and over again, the Force Greatsword, which released in the same patch as the Relic Blade, the Force Greatsword is kind of like just a power crept Relic Blade. I don't know exactly what the design intent was here, but what I'll say is the Force Greatsword, I think it just has too much synergy with Scryer's Gaze and Critical Psyker in general, and that's what leads it to being the powerhouse that it is. Like, you wouldn't build this weapon on a caster Psyker necessarily, but if you are using the Scryer's Gaze and Disrupt Destiny, oh my god, like, it just goes insane. So you definitely want to, there's really no option here, you definitely want to use this one. This is the Mark 6. Both of them, again, are obscenely statted. They have like stupid blessings like Riposte, which gives you 20% additional crit. They are easy to clear all horde, all light, gunners and shotgunners are just dead, no problem, right? The only weakness the weapon has is single target, and this Mark 6 gives you options for single target because it swaps out your initial slashes with it overhead, and then your second is a lunge, a big long lunge that has a really quite long distance reach, and both of those are absurdly high damage to bosses. So yeah, you can poke them in the eyeball and deal tens of thousands of damage. All of this, and the move speed of this weapon is not low at all, because, you know, lore wise, this weapon is not actually being held like physically by the Psyker. You'll notice it in some of his movesets, but the Psyker is using his mind to move this blade around. Right, yes, you can push, you can psychically push with it as well. Yeah, the blade is like supposed to be light because the Psyker is using their mind powers, their psychokinetic abilities to control it, not their muscles. But what that leads to is like this super long reach, wide sweep horde clearer with very powerful like strike down and lunge attacks that also moves fast. And then you got the warp shock slash, because for some reason, like, again, just like I was talking about with these, this weapon would still be in the top tier in the game, but I'm gonna put it at the very top of the top tier because I think it's more powerful than all the rest of these. But it also gets like to do the cast magic as well. I don't I don't understand why this weapon needed to have a horde clear, like it's just a screen wipe that charges up. And the only thing you got to do to, like these weapons, in order to get the flashbang, you got to block stuff, right? But then, in order to use this one, you just got to be killing things, which is what you're already doing. So you kill some stuff with the sword, and then you're like, okay, well, I just want to wipe out everything in that general fucking direction, and then you just throw it in that direction, everything dies because it's such a high damage attack, and it goes through all terrain, so you can shoot it through walls and hit stuff as well. It has great synergy with the kinetic, whatever it's called, the one that's gives you a free head pop whenever you hit a target. So like if you go throw it through a wall and there happens to be like a trapper or a reaper or something back there, it'll just kill them because it'll hit them with that, and then it'll detonate their head. Just insane, like the amount of synergies that this weapon has with the class, especially if you built in that crit style. And then yeah, someone James Grimm in the comment is mentioning that there is an interaction with this with the bolt pistol, where if you throw the wind slash out, I'll call it the wind slash, but the warp shock slash out, and then swap to your bolt pistol really quickly, when it hits the enemy, it'll apply stacks of bleed, and you can just do this over and over and over again. And you can also apply burn, and yeah, and you'll just be able to bleed everything, like just a magic spell that casts bleed, like this is Dark Souls or something. Pretty interesting. So yeah, this weapon is super high statted, insane damage, base damage numbers, crit numbers, everything. Again, like I was saying before, in order to be in this top tier, very rare to be in the top tier if you are not some sort of god with crits, and this one is definitely a crit god. Okay, let's come down off of our like good weapons arc, and let's go into some absolute crap. The hammers. The thunder hammers. This one is just going to go straight into the what purpose does this serve tier. I literally could not justify to you what the purpose of the Iron Helm thunder hammer is at this point. The Crucis, after the nerf or the change that made the Crucis do an overhead when it's empowered, I literally just don't know why you would have, like, what would the purpose of the Iron Helm would be, because the Crucis can now use that overhead strike down for its charge attack, which is like the only justifying factor for the Thunderhammer. And I saw that they were going to be changing something with the Thunderhammer in this recent patch, and I got excited, and then I saw what they were changing, and it was like, seriously? Seriously? Like, this weapon is so far behind the curve in terms of everything else in the game. Right now, it is a weapon that has like, oh wow, you can blow up like a single target that does like for a lot of damage. Guess what? The power maul can do pretty much like that much damage, but it can do it to like every target within 10 feet radius of it. And it just has a simple cooldown. It's super easy to charge up, and you don't have to sacrifice the base usability of the weapon in order to like play with the weapon. And I think that's the thing that I hate so much about this weapon, is that the existence moment to moment of playing with Thunderhammer when you're just trying to get some of those big boss dunks, like, you know what I mean, you've probably done it, right? Where you want to get into a game, you want to have a game that spawns a lot of like monstrosities or whatever, so you can get a bunch of one shots with your zealot, and then it just doesn't spawn any, or you've got plenty of other people on your team that can kill them before you even get to touch them because you're so fucking slow. Like, this weapon just doesn't have a spot right now, because what can it do that the Relic Blade can't do? You can literally one-shot captains and Burgles with the Relic Blade, and like really almost all the bosses with the Relic Blade, with the lunge and like stealth. You could do the same thing with the Eviscerator. The Eviscerator you can do like a charge run and just like annihilate a boss's health bar with it as well. This weapon is like, you will be playing at 25% your available power the entire game. When you go up against the boss, you finally hit 100% power and you can do something, but you're going to be over, like, your usefulness to the team is incredibly gimped by running this weapon. It's so bad. Like, I just don't know. And this is something that, like, I've harked on about for a long time, but Darktide has a problem where it biases itself towards fast attacking weapons. And this weapon is that, like, de facto, right? Almost all the best weapons have like fast reaction times, high crit, high mobility. This weapon is on the other end of that spectrum, and it leaves you super, super freaking vulnerable, and you just can't put out, there's no way to deal any effective DPS with this thing, is really what I'm saying. And the trade-off that you must make in order to get those big boss dunks is terrible. So just don't do it. Okay, we will go from there to the Force Swords. So Force Swords are Psyker weapons, obviously, and the Psyker weapons here, they have some really, really strong blessings. They have Uncanny Strike. They have the ability to give you, what's it called? Warp Fire on hit or on crit. They have like extra strength. There's lots of different blessings. Like these are blessings focused weapons, which makes sense. You know, since the weapon itself isn't really supposed to be a physical powerhouse. Now, if we were concerning ourselves with macros here, we could put this easily into God tier. I think that the Demos of all of these is probably in the OP tier. It's not OP in the same way that some of these other ones are OP, so I'll put it at the lower end. It just has generally like really solid stats and really strong usability. And since this is a Psyker exclusive weapon, right? So we have to consider what are the Psyker's needs. And this weapon really well fits those Psyker needs, because you've got Uncanny Strike, which can work very well alongside stacking a bunch of Soul Blaze stacks and then swapping over and getting Uncanny Strike and causing it to destroy the world. You can also use this to grant Deflector, which is an obscenely strong blessing, being able to block literally everything forever if you take this alongside certain talents in the tree. Yeah, it's just a really, really strong weapon. Now, the Elise and the Obscurus are a little bit weaker. I think the Elise is probably still superior statted. I haven't yet found, and someone can like correct me if there's any like off-brand use for the Obscurus. I feel like the Obscurus is just the odd one out here, where the Obscurus like just doesn't really have an identity it's got like cornered. The Demos has like the special thing going for it. It's weapon special that does a lot of damage, and of course you got the weapon special canceling macro nonsense. Elise is a solid fit. It's a solid weapon in general with moveset, and then the Obscurus just has a weird moveset. It does exist, yeah. So that's what I'll say. But yeah, just generally these weapons are super buoyed by just obscenely good blessings. And that's really all you need in the Psyker, because you're not playing with these. You're not playing melee Psyker. These are your backup weapon for your caster Psyker builds, and they're perfect for that. This is the melee Psyker weapon. We're almost to the other melee Psyker weapons too. Crusher. I think Crusher's just standard. Yeah. I gotta think. I don't know. I know I got the #1 Crusher fan in the chat, but yeah, a Crusher to me is just very much standard. The things that keeps the Crusher alive is it has Slaughter and has Skull Crusher. It's like, if they fuck with the Crusher too much, if they make it that much better, it'll multiply, right? So they gotta give it like 10% or something. Because with Slaughterer on one of its talents, you get 40% additional strength, which is stagger and damage. And then with Skull Crusher, you can get like up to a 120% increase to damage taken for the enemy. So this could go crazy, but it's so slow, and there's very few classes that can really effectively use it. I think the only class currently that really effectively uses the Crusher is the Arbites. The Arbites makes a really solid use of this weapon because of course, he's got the guaranteed stagger on headshot thing, which procs with Skull Crusher. That's very, very good. But outside of that, this weapon really lacks, again, it's the bias towards fast attacking, high critical type weapons in the game, where yes, this weapon is fairly competent, but it gets completely blown out of the water by all these other weapons that allow you to basically teleport around the map and hit things for thousands of damage with, you know, multiple times a second. This weapon is, in a different state of the game, would be very, very good. And unfortunately, the way they're pushing the game with like more and more enemies every second, the time to kill on this weapon isn't like the best in the world, and it really struggles with metal, or really struggles with oh yeah, that's right, only arbitrator and zealot, but the arbitrator is like the one that uses it like realistically. The zealot, I don't think the zealot really has any business with the crusher right now. The crusher is like, you have to use your push stab attack in order to kill crushers. It makes sense. Like crusher, the crusher enemy is very tanky into this weapon. I think that, I don't know. I think that maybe they should look at the empowered mode on this weapon. The empowered, to me, is like, I personally, it might just be a flaw of mine own, but I find myself really not using the empowered strike on this thing like almost at all. It doesn't really seem to have that much return on investment for the amount of time it takes to power it up. Maybe they could look into having this thing have some sort of like mini explosion stagger that lasts for a certain amount of time. Yeah, it's the crusher. The crusher has been a victim of the scaling of the game, I would say, right? When they increase base healths on enemies, they inadvertently took weapons like this that were doing okay before, and they made them a lot worse. And what they didn't fix is weapons that were overkilling enemies that are now just killing enemies. Yeah, you're still going to dump power output because like you're not using, like you can still, whether or not you have high power output, you just use it to open bulwarks, which you can do with a shove on the freaking Force Greatsword, right? A literal like 1 millisecond shove. So yeah, I think the Crusher is just super behind the curve. Just like it's better than the Thunderhammer. I'll give it that. I would so much rather, if you gave me the choice, you know, of which two of these weapons, oh my god, Crusher every single day of the week. Because the Crusher is at least a fun weapon to play with. It feels satisfying. You can get some good results out of it moment to moment. You're not just banking everything on getting one good boss kill in the entire game. But yeah, it's just, man, I wish they would also take a note from the power maul, like what the power maul does when it gets empowered. That's really cool. So but yeah, really good blessings here, but the speed and the like capabilities of the weapon moment to moment are what's lagging behind. But if they touch them at all, it could be really, really good. So maybe we'll see something for it. Dueling sword. Okay, well, dueling swords are really good in the game, obviously. Dueling sword, you know, it got nerfed. Womp womp. Wow, it's so terrible now, guys. The dueling sword is, I hadn't played with it in a very, very long time. And I went back to play with it the other day, and I was like, oh yeah, this is stupid. I forgot how stupid this was. Like, I was playing with Power Sword on Ved. I was playing with, the Devil's Claw. I was playing all sorts of stuff. And then I went back and played with a couple rounds of the Dueling Sword, and I was like, god damn it. Like, this weapon is just broken. This is, like, just de facto one of the better weapons in the game. The reason being, so it's got this blessing called Uncanny Strike. I don't know, you might have heard of it. But basically, Uncanny Strike gives you 25% rending when you hit an enemy in the head. Rending is really good, right? Rending makes you deal more damage to armored enemies, carapace armored enemies. And those are generally a big cucking factor for a lot of the weapons in this list. It also allows you to do more damage to bosses, who, you know, two really high health targets that take a long time to kill. I'm just going to give all three of them, because even the Mark V is like, still has some very competitive damage in this regard. The thing that people don't realize about this is that the rending stacks, they apply on top of your existing damage efficacy into carapace. So for some reason, these like needle thin, like, you know, they're rapiers, but for some reason they have insane armor damage, carapace damage ADMs, meaning they're starting at like the 50% mark, basically. So in order to get full 100% damage efficacy that you would against anything else, you only need to hit 2 headshots in order to be at that mark. And then after that point, every additional percentage of rending that you get is actually has like 1/4 of that effect, I think. Maybe it's like 1/4, 1/10, or something like that. But it still gives you bonus damage when you're over rending cap, which is stupid. So yeah, the rending on this thing means that you basically turn what are supposed to be scary, dangerous, armored enemies into paper mache. And the critical ratios on this, which they did nerf in this most recent patch, but still are nowhere near what's balanced, are like 3.5x on critical weak spot hits. And since this weapon is super easy to hit weak spot with, since you're already doing that because that's what's necessitated to hit uncanny strikes, yeah, you're gonna blow these enemies up for thousands of damage. And so you take a class that's ostensibly not supposed to be very good, like Veteran, and throw him into, throw him with a dueling sword in there, and he's two-piecing crushers, like literally just two-shotting crushers, who now have 6,500 HP or whatever. So yeah, like this weapon, it's hard to justify, and thank God they did like nerf it in some way, but at the time even it was hard to justify bringing anything else because it's just such an effective all-rounder. It cleaves through hordes really, really well. It single targets pretty much everything. You can instant kill mutants. Now you can even like parry away ragers and stuff. The parry isn't anywhere near as good as the parry on the Devil's Cause because there's no overlap and it's way weaker like numbers wise, but yeah, still just an absolutely disgusting god tier weapon. Has perfect synergy with so much stuff in the game because we've got Uncanny Strike, we've got Riposte if you wanted to go for more crits, if you got a crit focus build, you've got things like Thrust which allow you to preempt and like go for this massive damage stab headshots. And my favorite part of the Dueling Sword is, of course, the movement tech, being able to flick the blade or thrust the blade and send yourself like flying across the map and then slide. The whole arena's length is really, really good. Like, do not sleep on the ability of weapons like the Katachan or the Dueling Sword or the attack axe for that matter to use movement tech to boost your movement speed like crazy and close the gap on enemies, because that is a very, very important element. Then those are definitely OP. We'll then talk shovels. Man, I don't know. Shovels, like, realistically, I don't think anyone is really using shovels at this point. They do have Uncanny Strike. I'll give them that. They do have Uncanny Strike, so there is that for the shovels. But the shovels are just, like, I think definitionally, I feel like they're understated or, like, standard fare, somewhere in there. I think this one's pretty standard. I think these are just too jank. I think that's what I want to say. I think that's appropriate. I've taken this somewhat of a liking to the Mark 1, but I don't think I would give it anything higher than standard fare. I place it about on par with how I feel when I'm playing with like the Antax, where it's like, yeah, hell yeah, I can kill stuff with this, no problem. Like it's pretty solid. But there are like road bumps. There's bumpy spots where like, okay, I really do wish that I had something a little bit higher caliber to go off with here, because the shovel just doesn't bring the oomph that I was desiring in that moment. The folding shovels, they are tiered behind here because they are jank. Because you trade off like being able to do stuff in the instant that you can with the Mark 1. The Mark 1 is just a little thrust that has a very high impact on your weapon special, which is very useful. You can stack up extra stacks of Uncanny. You can do like a attack and then thrust immediately, kind of like the old Dueling Sword had. It's like a veteran's Dueling Sword. And then these ones require you to fold the shovel to get the attack, but the attack isn't nearly damaging enough. And also, like, again, like we were talking earlier, even though the Ogryn has these shovels that can fold and one-shot just like about anything in the game, that isn't really like where the game is at right now. Spending 5 seconds to fold a shovel and hit one enemy and then rip it out and then unfold it and all that shit, it just really isn't the tempo that the game is played at currently. It's too methodical and it's too jank to get it to work. And if you miss the attack, God help you. So there you go. Then we've got an obvious OP tier choice, the Arbites Shock Maul. This weapon is like the most deadly drumstick you've ever seen, just bludgeoning the shit out of enemies. A cursory glance at the stats page when Arbites was released told me everything I needed to know about how OP this weapon was going to be. It has like 350 damage on its light attacks or whatever it is. It's just so stupid. that this weapon has the baseline stats that it does, and then you start to attack with it, and you're like, what the fuck is this attack speed? Like, you are going crazy fast attack speed with it. That is added on top of the fact that this weapon can also electrocute enemies. If you use the weapon special, you can permanently electrocute them, and it gets a additional 25% damage bonus to electrocuted enemies, which that's if you use the blessing, which you should, but you can guarantee electrocute enemies if you stagger them, which you should be doing because it's an Arbites weapon. If you hit them in the head, ipso facto, you got a good weapon here. This weapon is probably the only Arbites weapon that has enough damage to really, like, say, I would say it's dominant against Crushers. The buff to Crushers hurt Arbites a lot because he used to be able to sort of just like overpower everything one after the other, and he would run through them because he would hit them with that initial blitz of like a charge in, and then they go boom, 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 and they would die. But then they buffed the Crusher's HP to like 6,500, and now you can kind of feel it with the sword and board here. Is you'll knock them to the ground, you'll beat them up, you'll get their damage, you'll get their HP to about 40% or so, and then they'll stand back up. And then from that point on, you have to actually have a fight with them. With this weapon, though, the damage out the gate is so strong that you can kill almost every target before they get to really retaliate on you. The only weakness here is, of course, the boss damage isn't like all that excellent. It does very well against captain shields, but monstrosities you'll still struggle. But that's just the role of the Arbites as it is. Definitely the strongest weapon on the Arbites class in terms of melee, though. So there's no real choice there. The chain axes. I don't know. Like, I feel like the Mark 12 is like the one that has been probably the most standard one over time. That's been how do I put this? I think this one is standard, right? I don't think this is a superior weapon. I think, what did I just accidentally grab? I think I left it. Oh, there we go. There we go. I think that the Mark 4, the darker one, I think this one is just jank. They're both borderline jank, if that makes any sense. These weapons are both in that jank category. Reason being, again, weapons like this, like the chain axe, that require you to lodge yourself into enemies to deal your damage, they're just not very synergistic with the way that Darktide is right now. It's hard to find the space and the time to do these attacks. Now, if you're a really skilled player, you can do that. But the reason that we want to use the 12 here instead of the 4 is because, like, the getting stuck in enemies with this weapon is a big problem. And if you use your light attacks with the 4, you'll get stuck in enemies, as you were saying there. Half is like, yeah, this one revs on light, so you'll get stuck into enemies, and you don't want that. You just kind of want to move through those enemies. We want a paradigm where when we have a heavy target that actually needs a lot of extra damage, we can rev for that. So this one will rev on those heavies. You'll get a good chainsaw action in there. It's okay, right? The problem is when you get up against too many enemies, because, yeah, you can't find a spot to actually do what you're doing. However, just like with all chain weapons, very respectable damage against captain shields, pretty decent damage against bosses. I'm not certain what I'd want to see them do about these weapons. It's just weird. Chain weapons in general in the game are having a problem right now, excepting maybe the eviscerator, because the eviscerator is just such a it has such a powerful chain sawing action. But I think that's mostly because, like, the zealot as a character can level out those issues. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know exactly what I'd like to see about the chain axes, but for right now, I think if I were you, I would steer clear of them, mostly because they are just going to be a little bit too difficult to use for the return on investment. But we have a weapon here that's very easy to use and generates an immense return on investment, and that is the Ogren's Slab Shield. This is obviously an OP style weapon. Insane weapon. Went back to playing with the other day, and I was like, wow, how is this fair? Don't know. But basically, this weapon has one move. It literally has like a one attack all you'll need to learn to play with this weapon is you'll need to learn how to channel your heavy 1 attack, which is smashing with the edge of the shield. And then you'll need to learn how to slide as you're holding sprint as you charge it up to get a little bit of a speed boost forward. Because what happens when you're charging it is you slow down to like crawling speed. But if you slide, then you'll get a speed boost. So you can continue to move at normal speed, more or less, and then you'll unleash the shield. And then from there, you block, cancel, and drag it back in, and you just do the same attack over and over. There's almost no reason to ever go outside of just doing the heavy, the heavy one, heavy one, heavy one, heavy one. And if you get good with it, it looks seamless. It looks like you're just chaining that heavy one edge shield bash over and over and over again, which has insane stagger. Something like 60 stagger value when you hit in the head, which means that everything... oh yeah, the push stab, the push attack is also really, really good. That's a good follow-up attack. If you push and you do push stab, you'll do an overhead strike down that does very solid damage as well. But for most purposes, if you just get into a combat and you just keep doing heavy one reset, heavy one reset, heavy one reset, everything just gets staggered, knocked down on the floor, and then you can come around and do your push stab slams or just honestly light attack spam on them and kill them. Plus, the fact this weapon, of course, is doing heavy attacks and can hit tons of stuff in a big, wide swath, that stacks 4 stacks of batter on the target thanks to the Ogryn's talents, and this weapon has Skull Crusher, and it's one of the best Skull Crusher applicators in the game because, of course, the enemies are going to get heavy staggered by like 60 stagger hitting them. Even Crushers, Maulers are flat out on their ass, right? So these enemies will get heavy staggered, and then every time you hit them while they're down, they're getting 40% additional damage, 80% additional damage taken, and then they just die to all the bleeds and stuff on them. So, and this weapon is also ultra synergistic with exactly what the Ogryn needs right now, which is he needs a weapon that can sustain his toughness very well. Needs a weapon that can prevent him from the bad situations that he'll find himself in. And it has a really, really large push cone and stuff to keep stuff off of you. Yeah, it's just, this weapon is really, really good. The only thing that I just really don't like about this weapon and Ogryn in general is how slow you feel when using it, but, you know, to be as powerful as this is, I think there's some trade-offs that need to be made. We've got eviscerators up next. I think that both of the eviscerators, to be quite honest with you, are probably in the superior tier now. I definitely say that they're better than anything down here. I think this might also just be a function of them being on the Zealot class. The Zealot with charge or stealth or whatever, the eviscerator actually kind of slaps. This thing can chew through bosses, tons and tons of damage if you're using your weapon special here. The weapon special on this is actually worth landing. You know, you'll destroy whatever you landed on, right? And it can actually like one tap a captain shield. It can, if you're using like a stealth or a charge build, you can one tap a burgle with it. Yeah, really, really, really cool. Like that they actually buff this weapon. The only problems this weapon has is that like moment to moment, it feels bad to play with this weapon because you're slow. Like it's just you're very, very slow. I think that I prefer to play with the Relic Blade just because the Relic Blade, to me, has better moment to moment gameplay. You're not investing as much on landing those massive chained hits. It's kind of like the dynamic between the Crusher and the Thunderhammer, where the Crusher has invested a little bit more of its power in its base stats moment to moment, and the Thunderhammer's invested more in those empowered strikes. Same dynamic here. The Relic Blade in general is more powerful in the general mix of combat, and then the Eviscerator is a little bit less powerful in normal combat, but then when like a boss or captain shows up, you can annihilate them in no time. So, and there's nothing wrong with taking the Eviscerator as well, because the Eviscerator also has good synergistic talents for crits, which is very much up the alley of the Zealot. So I think this weapon is strong and good, and it's good where it's at. No more buffs, please. Power Sword. Okay, so we got 2 Power Swords here. I will give, this is going to be one of the highest. We got one more weapon that'll probably exceed this, but this weapon, this is the Mark 6, and this is the Mark 3. This is the first tier list that I've actually gotten the pictures right in. I always said the right names, but yeah. So I'll give the Mark 3 the standard fare. You know, it's a power sword, blah, blah, blah. but the Mark 6 is exceptional because it has a move that the Mark 3 doesn't have access to, which is the push stab. This weapon, when empowered with the push stab, does a lunge that will lobotomize whatever you hit with it, and then you follow up with a light attack that strikes down overhead at the 11 o'clock angle, and it just like two pieces. Pretty much anything. You'll just go, and if you can master that, if you can get the muscle memory for activating this weapon, and then one fell swoop, you can activate and start that animation before you even crack the blade and start the activation animation. If you can get that down, then this weapon becomes a really, really big powerhouse for the veteran. Because on light attacks, that's how you clear hordes, right? You just activate light attack and you go, and you just activate a light attack, there you go. And that's how you clear hordes. Everything dies in one hit. Just like with the Relic blade, where like light attacks are good enough to clear everything, you don't have to worry about it. But the second you see the like the crusher or the mauler or something like that, you start to go into those repeated push stab strike down combos, and you will absolutely pump damage. And I love playing with this. It feels super cool. This weapon also is like looks sick, and it's like it's not that mechanically complex, but it's mechanically complex enough that you feel good about playing and getting good with it. The other thing that I'll say about it that I don't love, but I understand what they're doing, is that it does have a mandatory blessing. In order to play with this weapon at all, you must have Power Cycler Tier 4. Yeah, that's like the basic fundamental requirement to use the weapon. If you don't have Power Cycler Tier 4 on there, the weapon is like cheeks. So make certain that you are getting that blessing. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to do anything with it, really. And that's just where it stands. Okay, we got heavy swords. Heavy swords are super standard fare at this point. They've given them slight buffs here and there. There's, to my undignified palate, but we've got the Mark 6, the Mark 7, the Mark 9, I believe. The Mark 6 and Mark 7 are inverts of one another. They just have a flip-flop of what order their moves hit in, but the exact same statings on damage otherwise. Mark 9 has lower overall damage on its attacks, but it's got an easier to access moveset. Overall, though, these weapons, of course, have the same problems they've always had. They are just kind of the struggle bus against crushers. They were one of the worst affected by that crusher and enemy health buff in general. They're manageable, right? The Hive scum, of course, can make any weapon good, any melee weapon good, so he makes these pretty dang good. The Zealot would probably be the only other class that I would recommend using the heavy sword on in any way, because the Zealots can use charge, or they can use Shroud Field in order to get a really big wallop hit that can help them to kill those threatening those Carapace armored boys. But outside of that, I don't know. I still feel like the heavy sword, it harkens back to like a very pure time. You know, it's a very Puritan's blade. If you want to have a no frills weapon that's just like, you know, it's a weapon and then you get to be like testing yourself against enemies, this is the weapon for you. There's literally like nothing here that I would describe as anything. There's no like real accursed factors about it. Like its damages are fine. It's not great against armor, but it's okay if not every weapon is good against armor. But also it doesn't have any like huge redeeming, like, oh my gosh, like this is the special thing about this weapon that I want to make a build around. It's just a super, super standard fare weapon. So there you go. And we've got, oh man, we got some OP stuff left here. The twin Shivs. Okay, so here's another huge, massive power gap disparity. These Mark III Shivs, standard at best. Mark 1 Shivs, insane, perhaps the most insane weapon in the game. You know, Dueling Sword Mark 4 is right up here as well, if we're ordering stuff at all. The Twin Linked Dual Shivs, the Mark 1 improvised Shivs here are categorically, like, numerically fucked. There's no way that this weapon is, like, in any sense balanced. What they did is they nerfed a few of the talents on this, or the blessings on this. They made it so that the uncanny strike that applies to these blades is only like 40% instead of being 100 and whatever percent. They made it so that the what's it called? It's not riposte, but it's the other one, the one that gives you finesse. It lasts only 2 seconds instead of the normal 3 seconds or whatever it is when you get the dodge. That stuff it seems like it's unfair. It seems like, oh, why is this weapon not to get to have it when the dueling sword has it in, you know, in spades? But for this weapon, it's completely fair, because this weapon is dealing 5 to 6x damage on headshots and criticals, which that would be absurd on its own, right? But then you have to remember this is a Hive Scum exclusive weapon. And the Hive Scum, as I've mentioned a few times already, he doesn't care about the base damage of weapons. He only cares about the multipliers, because he can change the base damage of the weapon to whatever he damn well pleases, as long as he is killing targets with hyper violence, which you are doing if you're playing melee. So what'll happen is this weapon has like a 100 or 200 damage base attack on its heavy, and then you'll overkill something by a lot of damage, and you'll add 400 damage on top of that. And that's on the restrained side. So what did that effectively do to your total damage? Well, it took it from 200 to 600. That means that your end damage at the very end of the calculation is going to be 3 times. So the Hive Scum takes these and he multiplies damage to the absolute moon. And that is why these things are so, like, god-awful insane. You will casually hit, you know, 10, 15, I've seen 28, 30,000 damage in a single hit with these Shivs because of that hyper violence combo with Rampage and all that stuff cooking. Yeah, just completely absurd on its face. Then you have to consider you can also throw these Shivs to, you know, poison and kill targets at range. You can, of course, use them as the devil's ski poles and, like, fling yourself around the map at light speed, because this weapon also needed to be super mobile for some reason. Yeah. The Shivs are insane. They're truly insane, and they are de facto the best weapon on the Hive Scum. And that is Mark 6 power sword, yes, in the S tier, the OP tier, due to its one good weapon combo. Yeah, these things are disgusting. Now I want to give you know, this might just be my own personal bias, and you guys can let me know how I feel, but I kind of also want to put Bonesaw up here, but I think it's probably more fair that it fits down here with the non-superior Tac-Axe style things. Bonesaw, okay, I guess I want it to be clear. These are the ones you want to use. I don't know why you would use the Mark IIIs. The Bonesaw, though, listen, Bonesaw is something special, okay? Because Toxin is not balanced. There's no way in hell that Toxin is balanced in this game. And the Bonesaw, of course, applies Toxin on every single hit, which, of course, refreshes the duration of Toxin. So you just keep hitting enemies. You don't have to worry about finesse of, like, overheading them or anything. You can do that, right? You can absolutely go for these overhead strikes, and it has some pretty damn good critical ratios. Like, it gets an extra, I want to say, like 7% base crit as part of its setups. And this weapon, though, the stacking of that Toxin is really the thing that's here. The ability to continually refresh 30 stacks of Toxin just demolishes boss health bars. I'll go into a game where I'm playing a completely tank-focused, support-oriented Hive Scum build. I'm literally just spamming Stim Supply. I have no offensive talents in the entire tree. All I gotta do is just shoot that boss 3 times with the Tox Pistol, and then just go up there and melee him over and over with the sword. Now, some part of that is the function of the Tox Pistol, the Needle Pistol, giving a bunch of initial stacks, but still, the ability to just continually chunk and continually apply Toxin to everything around you has tons of synergy with the class, gets your stims cool back down insanely fast. Plus, you can switch this to purple mode and apply brittleness, which works for your whole team, and it's independent of other teammates' brittleness effects, so you can effectively stack even more increased damage taken. Yeah, I love the Bonesaw. I think the Bonesaw is probably, like, the weapon that I would choose in the class if I wasn't specifically, like, building around it, to be honest with you, because it just is nice and versatile. I feel safe with it. It has lots of stamina to do blocking with, etc. Now we got to do the crowbar. The crowbar, I feel like the crowbar is better than stuff in this tier, but that also might be a function. Nah, it's got to be better than stuff in that tier, right? It's a superior weapon for a certain. The crowbar is a powerful weapon, but the difference between the crowbar and, like, other weapons in the class is pretty blatant when you look at it. It's like yes, it has a really powerful like rip attack. The ability to land a hit on a target and like rip their skull plate off and perma stagger them. They're guaranteed staggered when they're hit by that, so that feels good. The problem, I think, a lot of the times is finding the space to do that in, because enemies are everywhere. They did the correct thing, or they did one of the correct things. They recently buffed this weapon. They made the correct choice here in changing it or buffing it so that the swap time was faster, because that is a very annoying part of the weapon, is swapping between the overhead claw mode and the bludgeoning mode. That's definitely a really, really solid change there. And they also made it so that it invests more damage in ripping out that claw mode, which is good. I would still like to see perhaps 1 or 2 blessings on it that are really, really good, because right now I think that is potentially where it's lagging behind. Is if it had access, I mean, shit, if it had access to Skull Crusher, I'd be using this thing every fucking day. But like this weapon, it has like less potent blessings than the other ones do. For instance, both the Shivs and the Bone Saw have access to Riposte, which gives 20% crit. For this weapon, you have to push in order to get 12.5% crit for half that duration for 3 seconds, which just doesn't seem fair. I really wish that it had a little bit more baseline stuff, and I understand what they're going for. However, the weapon has, as I've explained in the past, has a bit of an anti-synergy with the class in general, because it locks you into attacks, and it doesn't have the best synergistic stuff with crits, as opposed to all these other weapons which take crits and run with them, and it's also too slow to effectively use hyperviolence, which also sucks. So, yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. Bonesaw has Shred. Thank you for keeping me straight. But yeah, they both have 20% potential crit, and this one has 12.5% potential crit, and these ones have, you know, much higher uptime than this. Okay, we got just a few left. We've got our Power Falchions. Man. I don't know, man. What's the point of the Power Falchion? To be quite honest with you. I don't think the Power Falchion is as good as the Crowbar or anything up here, is it? But I also don't feel like it's as bad as the stuff that's down here. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying it's standard. Yeah, they're standard. They're standard. The thing they're attempting with the Power Falchion is to give you an easier way to use the Power Sword, right? That's what they're trying to give you. They're saying, hey, you know, you don't want to be activating the blade every second to get like a big, powerful strike. Well, you don't have to. Here, introducing the Power Falchion. But the problem with the Power Falchion is it just has sort of middling damage and not a whole lot else to offer. Plus, very slow movement speed, which I think is like maybe one of the biggest killers of weapons. If you aren't an absolute powerhouse in terms of damage and you have a movement speed like penalty, or you just have slow movement speed when you're wielded in general, it's gonna hurt you. It's gonna hurt you a lot. So this weapon kind of, you just get set up and you swing and you entrench your, very much like the Power Sword, right? Where you back yourself into a corner. When you activate it, you go slow, and when you are swinging it, you're moving slow. But the Power Sword is like, if you swing at those targets, they are going to die. Those 3 swipes that you're going to do are going to kill the stuff that's attacking you generally. There's no guarantee of that. And what I found when I was testing and playing with it is that I would go into a fight with Ragers. Ragers in particular would just fuck me hard because it doesn't have any stagger and it doesn't have enough kill potential to fight them. So you end up having to play scared against Ragers because you can't go toe-to-toe with them. Versus with the Power Sword, I would come in there swinging with the push stab and immediately kill one of them. And then the fight would just be over from there, right? You could just rinse and repeat with that and keep your distance in between. The Power Sword is like too slow to play evasive. It's too weak to play offensive. It's just like, it's so mid that I can't really put it any higher than that. All right, and then finally we've got the Shock Mauls, the Mutatorum and the Agni Shock Maul. I am a big stan of these weapons, okay, but I gotta be honest with you, they are probably not in the OP category, okay? They're gonna go right here. I would say that they are, at the top part of the superior stats tier. These weapons have very effective damage, ADM into carapace, like 70%, 80% damage into carapace. They look weak on paper, right? They look like they have almost no damage on paper because their numbers are really low. However, remember, Skull Crusher. Skull Crusher exists. And of course, these weapons are the premier applicators of Skull Crusher, perhaps only behind the slab shield here, because these weapons can taser shock everything. And when things are taser shocked, they are staggered, and then you just repeatedly hit them, and then they take more and more damage, and they just die. So all you have to do to kill a Crusher is come up to him, shock prod him, and then bonk him in the head 3 times, and he's dead. You just go overhead, overhead, overhead. Personally, I started with this one, the Agony, but then I've moved to the Munitorum because I think this one has the superior moveset. So all you do is for Horde Clear, it's heavy 1, sweep like that, light 1, sweep back, heavy 1, light 1, just sweep back and forth. And the just light attack spams are good. There's like little uppercut combos in there. But then the real combo here is, of course, the shock prod into heavy will start with a strike down. So you'll shock prod, and then from then on, every heavy afterwards will be heavy 1, heavy 2, heavy 3, or all just strike downs. Bonk, bonk, bonk in the head. Very good stuff. The de facto best weapon, if you are playing a support or you are trying to be the counter to like bosses, if you need some extra boss damage on your team or like captain damage, the captains and stuff, they see one of these and they get scared. They piss themselves because this will shred a captain shield before they can stand up. All you got to do is you got to pop their shields 1 time. When their shields are broken, just bonk them in the head a couple times while they're down there, because they're staggered while they're rolling around on the ground. As soon as they stand up, start shocking them again, and you'll see their shields and they'll just get demolished before they even get their posture back. So yeah, super utility focus weapon. I love the design of this weapon. It's just powerful enough to get you through most of the game that you don't have to worry about, like, you know, playing like the Thunderhammer where, oh man, I can't manage shit second to second. No, it's perfectly fine for most of the game. And then it has those perfect synergy moments where you like get that use case of like being able to super turbo amplify the damage that your targets are dealing to something. And yeah, awesome. I love it. I think most of that just comes down to Skull Crusher being so fucking OP, but hey, we got Skull Crusher, so we're going to abuse it while we can. And there you go, guys. So that is all of the melee weapons in the game as of Beyond the Hive update in 2026. So let me know what you think in the comments. I think that for right now, I'm going to make the point that a lot of the lower weapons in the game have been low for a very, very long time. And it's the same thing I've said in a lot of my recent videos and comments about balance, is that I think that it's about high time we start like really cooking and going for some very, very big buffs, because these like 5-10% buffs to some of the languishing weapons are not going to get us to any semblance of fun or balance for these weapons anytime soon. You know, we can do like tiny little buffs to the reset timings on Thunderhammer all day, but unless we start to actually legitimately buff its attack speed and stuff by like 15% or more, we are never going to be catching up to anything in the higher tier. And if they want to, you know, Fat Shark doesn't give a fuck and they want to have like Omega, like striated, you know, tier lists, sort of caste system weapons where there's just de facto way better weapons to use in most cases, that's okay. But I would think that they would want to make their, you know, 70-ish weapons sort of all be fun and useful to play with. And right now, I don't think that's the case for a lot of this stuff down here. Case in point, you never fucking see them. So yeah, there you go, guys. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. And Mr. out of here. Bye-bye.